Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck slot, we are playing TrueFuturism's Legacy Challenge winning Cloudpost deck. Cloudpost is a deck that continues to impress me at the moment. It's certainly got a new lease of life from the Modern Horizons set, and I think this is the deck that had the biggest upgrade from Modern Horizons compared to any other deck. It's basically a new deck, right? So what is this deck trying to do? Well, we're trying to make a lot of mana. And the way we go about doing that is using Urza's Tower alongside Planar Nexus, which makes our Urza's Tower tap for 3. So we can have 4 mana on turn 2, which is pretty good. We've also got some Cloudposts, some Glimmerposts. Obviously the Planar Nexus is a locus for Cloudpost as well. And we're using these to generate a lot of mana and then get going with things like Eye of Ugin to tutor up the things we need. Now, the reason this deck is so powerful in my mind is largely down to this card, Sowing Mycospawn. This card is an absolute house. So 4 mana for a 3/3 that on a cast trigger gets you another land out your deck. When we're trying to do exactly that and put lands into play, this is kind of like taking an extra turn a lot of the times because we're getting like a really powerful land. And this particular build isn't running the Wastelands, which is something that some of the lists are running. But either way, we can use this and just ramp out with more mana and then go over the top of other people. In terms of going over the top, we've got some pretty big things to do that. Ulamog and Emrakul. You don't really go over the top bigger than hardcasting these creatures. We also have a Kozilek's Command, which we can sink a load of mana into. This gives us removal, allows us to dig for that piece we need, and it's just a really, really good card in these sorts of decks that have a lot of colourless mana kicking around. We've also got a little Karn package and a One Ring that can help us survive for a turn by using the fog effect and then draw us into the extra bits and pieces. And we just need a few turns with this deck, really. We get a few turns going, then those turns turn into giant monsters and an unassailable advantage that's really hard for our opponents to deal with. We've got a lot of little tutor box stuff in our lands, like whether that's a Tabernacle, a Karakas, the Yavimaya to help cast some costs, the Bojuka Bog, a couple of Boseijus. We've also got the Echoing Deep, so we can rebuy a Bojuka Bog multiple times. And we're finding these usually with crop rotation, as well as the Sowing Mycospawn. So quite a lot of interesting tools there. We've got a little bit of fast mana in the Elvish Spirit Guide. This just makes it easier for us to cast the Sowing Mycospawn ahead of curve, because we'll have a lot of colourless mana if we've got, like, let's say, Planar Nexus and Urza's Tower, but we might necessarily not have the green mana. So the Elvish Spirit Guide can help with that without slowing us down. Once upon a time, smooths out our early game. We've got a flexible piece of disruption in Disruptor Flute, which it might not permanently shut down like a scary spell that our opponent can cast, but it will slow it down enough that we can take over the game with all our other bits and pieces. We've also got Vexing Bauble to make sure our big haymakers resolve and get the work put in that way, as well as also just stopping some of the scary combo style decks. In terms of our Karn package, it's a very shallow Karn package, this one. We've just got the Ensnaring Bridge and the Mycosynth Lattice. Obviously, Lattice plus Karn, when we've got loads of mana, we can just do that. Our opponent doesn't get to play spells, and then we can win the game at our leisure. The Ensnaring Bridge is just a nice thing to tail behind. We've then got one Plains, which is going to be casting these Swords to Plowshares. Why not run the best removal in the game? We've got some Planar Nexuses, which can give us the mana, as well as just Sowing Mycospawn to go and find our basic Plains in order to enable the Swords to Plowshares when we need it. We've got a little bit of protection for our hand in the form of Vale of Summer. This can also be used to force through some spells. Got some Force of Vigors to blow up some problem nuisance permanents, and some Leyline on the Void for all these graveyard decks that can go underneath us. And that's kind of it. There's a lot of play to this because you have a lot of choices in terms of sequencing lands, what you're tutoring for with your Eye and your Sowing Mycospawn and your crop rotation. And this deck has really impressed me. I'm curious to play this build that doesn't have any Wastelands. That's something that I've been absolutely hating to see on the other side of the table when I've been playing against the Cloudpost deck. So this is the challenge winning list from TrueFuturism, who is an expert with Cloudpost decks. So I'm going to assume that they know what they're doing far more than I do. And I'm excited to see how this one plays out. Alright, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's get Cloudpost in and Urza's Tower in and just making all the colours matter in the world. Let's go. We are on the play for game 1. Let's have a little look at what our hand can achieve. This hand can make a turn 2 Sowing Mycospawn. That seems pretty good to me. I think we will click the keep button. We have to make a decision whether we play the Eye of Ugin or the Planar Nexus. So the Eye of Ugin represents 2 mana, but it doesn't tap to cast spells. Whereas the Planar Nexus represents a whole bunch of stuff. So I think we're supposed to play out the Eye here. Our opponent could just snap off a Wasteland here. They did not snap off a Wasteland. Got a Mishra's Bauble coming our way, so I'm getting the impression our opponent is some sort of Grixis tempo deck. But they could be like straight black-red. We'll find out in a second, I suppose. Ooh, a Bayou. Interesting. So they're going to draw a card off this bauble. We could be looking at a good old-fashioned Junding over here. So we can cast this, get our Mycospawn going. We get to tutor for a land. So we can go get the tower. This just represents 3 mana straight up. We can play the Disruptor Flute. I'm not entirely sure what I would name with the Disruptor Flute in this situation. A swamp. So we could name like some hand disruption, like a Thoughtseize or something, but why wouldn't they have played it beforehand? So it's 3, 4, 5. So we can just cast this with Kicker. We do need to play the Echoing Deeps to do that so that we can funnel the mana. Because if we play this and we don't choose anything, it's just a colourless land. But then it gives us the mana we need to add a green here. And we can take out our opponent's Bayou. We can just go and get some more mana here. I think we're probably looking at just another tower. Yeah, Sowing Mycospawn is a very scary Magic the Gathering card. Again, I don't really know what we're naming with Disruptor Flute. It's not like Sorcerer's Spyglass where you get a little peek before you get to do anything with it. A Wasteland on our Planar Nexus is annoying, but we are already so far ahead. If our opponent is spending their 3rd turn just to Wasteland us when they haven't been doing anything else with the rest of their mana, then they're just going to get clonked for 6 and we can still keep playing spells. That is a Chrome Mox. A Dark Ritual. Okay, so we're on some sort of combo here. There is a Lion's Eye Diamond, another Lion's Eye Diamond, a Veil of Summer. So what has our opponent got? 2 cards in hand. So they could have an Infernal Tutor here. Okay, I think we allow that Veil of Summer. Here is an Infernal Tutor. They're cracking these. It's going to give them 6 mana. So Storm Count is 6. So if they go and get Tendrils, that will be 7. So that'll be 14 damage. If they get another, or sorry, it'll be 16 because if we cast this Disruptor Flute. So if they go and get another Infernal Tutor here, what does that do for them? That allows them to go and get... I don't think this works for them if we name Beseech the Mirror here. If they cast another one, this will go up to 8, and then it'll be 9, and that's still not lethal. So we go and get Beseech the Mirror here, and just make that cost 3 more. Okay, they're going for an Ad Nauseam line. So this is a non-deterministic way of trying to win the game here. They don't need a lot. Okay, so they've got a little bit of starting mana over there. They've got the Tendrils in hand, which makes things awkward for them. Dark Ritual. That should be enough now, because they can just naturally go into the Tendrils now. Yep, so they imprint like a Thoughtseize or Veil or whatever. They play out these other things. They've got enough Storm here. They just cast the Dark Ritual, use this other mana here, and then they can just point the Tendrils at our face. Alright. What would I like for this sort of matchup? I think the Veil of Summer definitely has some merit here. The Vexing Bauble is a great tool that we have access to. I do like Force of Vigor. We can then hit some random clutch bits here and there that can jam our opponent up. The Karn the Great Creator is also pretty useful here. Kozilek's Command does not seem at its best. It can dig for some of our like scarier pieces, but then on the front side it's not really doing anything. So I think we're better off getting rid of this sort of stuff and bringing in like Veils, which can fog for a turn, and then the Force of Vigors that can go alongside our other bits to smash some stuff up. And we're boarding down on colourless permanents, on colourless cards to make it easier to cast these as well. So I think that makes sense to me. The Bojuka Bog is something that we might occasionally want to reach for. I guess we don't need the Karakas here, unless our opponent's got some sort of shouldered Duke. It'd be nice to have an answer to a shouldered Duke. So I think I will keep this in. It's also land, and we want lots of mana in our deck anyway. And I think it's just going to be more useful than a Kozilek's Command. You could board in Leylines, but our opponent can probably play through that quite nicely, so I'm just going to something like this. Our opponent did not use their graveyard in that game. I believe in the power of Once Upon a Time. So we get a free look at another land. A Cloudpost, a Glacial Chasm, a Mycospawn. I think we have to take a land here, and it's probably going to be the Cloudpost. I think we do still have to play this Vexing Bauble. Our opponent runs hand disruption stuff, so we need to just get out from underneath what our opponent's doing. This does make our Force of Vigor less useful, but our opponent can't really do very well into a Vexing Bauble, so we've just got an extra line of defense if the Bauble goes away. Our opponent was not a good old-fashioned Jundling like I first suspected they could be. I think we get this Cloudpost down this turn. This gives us 3 mana next turn, plus the 4 from the Boseiju, so we can start cranking out the Boseiju. The Wandering Brainstorm from our opponents. Our opponent's shown us they've got some basics in their deck as well, so there's no point trying to attack their lands. Obviously with Boseiju they can go and get anything that has a basic type, so they'll definitely be able to get some more lands out of it. But the ad nauseam kind of suggests they're on like an ad nauseam tendril style list, which tends to have a little bit more in the way of basic mana. It's not like the Epic Storm where they've got like 6 things that they can... four lands they can usually get out of their deck. Okay, so I think we play the Boseiju out here. We just start cooking with the One Ring. Good cards are good. This will make our opponent's life a little bit easier in terms of the amount of Storm they have to get. But I'm not really worried about that. We can start throwing some Disruptor Flutes on Dark Ritual, and that can jam our opponent up a bit. But ideally we want to start doing some big haymakers. Another Vexing Bauble, and Emrakul the Aeons Torn. So I think we are tapping this. True. I think we probably tap the Nexus here. We'll cast this Vale of Summer. I will take a Planar Nexus here because we just want to keep making land drops. Play this. This increases the amount of mana that our Cloudpost can get us. We have a Vale of Summer and a Disruptor Flute in this turn cycle. It's building up a decent chunk of mana over there. Let's fire in a Disruptor Flute here. So we shut off artifact mana with the Vexing Bauble, and the Disruptor Flute can shut off other bits. I think we are probably going to crop rotate away our Planar Nexus here and just get another Cloudpost. Work towards that sweet Emrakul mana. Draw some cards, see if we get a better land that we want to play. The Sowing Mycospawn. So these are tapping for 3 each. So we can really... So this is 3, 6, 7, 8. So we're not quite at big old Emrakul mana, but we're not a million miles away. I think I will play out this Yavimaya. This is 3 mana. Crash in with this. Let's get rid of their blue source. We just go and get another Cloudpost here. And I'm just going to play out another Vexing Bauble just to keep super safe. So we now have 4 of these. This is 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we can just hardcast Emrakul if we can make it to next turn, and that should be more than enough to win the game. We've got ourselves a Vale of Summer to get through whatever our opponent does this turn. Now, a lot of these Storm decks do have lines that win through Vale of Summer, but winning through Vale of Summer, the Disruptor Flute stopping their Dark Ritual, and the Vexing Bauble is a lot. Alright, it's time to go large here. I would like some more mana, so I'm just going to tap this first. Alright, I will play out this, and then we will just cast this. Big Emma has come to play. And that's the match. The game. So now we need to go to game 3. This is where we have the option of boarding in the Leyline. If our opponent is on Beseech the Mirror lines, having the Leyline could be really clutch here. So I think I'm inclined to just have maximum interaction and board in these Leylines. Now, something has to go for these Leylines. Does it need to be something like... So we have Karn as well, which is excellent against our opponent's deck. Tabernacle can deal with a bunch of goblins if they make them. Maybe we'll take out Chasm here. That's not really what this matchup is about. And then we just need to shave one thing. I do like the One Ring. It buys us a guaranteed turn. I like having the density of green spells we have. So it's probably like the Ulamog or the Emrakul. It's probably... I guess it could be the Disruptor Flute. It should probably just be the Ulamog. Like, we can just chain some Sowing Mycospawns together, and then the Emrakul is like a, we cast this, we win the game sort of thing. Okay. Alright. Now, these Leylines might not come to pass, but our opponent is relatively likely to have a Beseech the Mirror line involving Guy as well. So this gives us a free spell. It gives us a Disruptor Flute, which is kind of like something. We have the Force of Vigor, which can do some work. It's not all in all a particularly exciting hand. And how we play this out? I guess a lot of this hinges on what the Once Upon a Time finds, which is a bit of a slow one. Would I rather mull to something like a Vexing Bauble, is the question. I think I will keep this one and try it out. Once Upon a Time sees a lot of cards, and we have our draw step as well. Alright, our opponent's not doing anything on turn 1. They haven't shown us Surveil lands yet either, which is another interesting one. Alright, we found the Vexing Bauble. Beautiful. Let's have a look. What do we want here? A Planar Nexus. Probably better than a Glimmerpost. Not by huge amounts, though. The Sowing Mycospawn is something we're looking for, but I think we just want the Planar Nexus. That makes our Urza's Tower better. I think we play out the Nexus here, and then deploy the Vexing Bauble. And this can just sit and play for a bit, and then we can start playing out like Tower and Cloudpost and just accelerating our way through this game. We're going to see a Brainstorm end step here. So this is the Brainstorm that could get them the pieces they need to just be able to win the game. That's why they're doing the end step here, because that tells us that hand isn't a million miles away from where it needs to be. But a million miles can be just one card. It's like, that's how close they could be, but then they need that one card still. Alright, so they kept one of the cards off the Brainstorm and shuffled the rest off that fetch land. An Abrupt Decay. Sure. There is a Lion's Eye Diamond. There is a Mishra's Bauble. How much more are they going to play out here? They're going to crack this Bauble. No more plays. Interesting. A Sowing Mycospawn. We can't deploy that like I would wish to right now. So we can Disruptor Flute and hold up Force of Vigor, crop rotation style stuff. Or we could just get this Cloudpost down right now, but I think we're probably best off deploying the Saga, having access to the Disruptor Flute right now. And I think we are firing this off right now, so we don't want to add Storm to our opponent's plan over there. So I think we're going to name Infernal Tutor, because that is the card that our opponent has shown us. Let's make that cost 3 more. So we can fire off this Force of Vigor at an opportune moment and take out this Lion's Eye Diamond if our opponent puts something else on the stack. But it looks like they're just Mishra's Barbling again. They're cracking this Bloodstained Mire and passing. They're looking at their own library with the Mishra's Bauble. That's why they're cracking there. Karn the Great Creator. Well, that's a horrible one for our opponent to have to play through, isn't it? So we have the mana here, so we could just play the Karn straight up. We could activate... We could turn the Disruptor Flute into a creature and attack. All their stuff that removes this is going to be able to remove it anyway. Or we could just nail this Lion's Eye Diamond in case they manage to get rid of our Karn, which I think is probably the better play here. Then we can play our tap land out of the way here. We still have Force of Vigor available. We've just got some pretty horrible opponents for our permanents for our opponent to deal with. So we have the Lattice lock this turn as well. Let's just minus. Let's get the Lattice. Play... Alright, our opponent's scooping up because we're about to lock them out of the game. So, yeah, we didn't like do the super high-end stuff in this particular game. Obviously, we cast Emrakul in the previous one. But we just got lots of really irritating permanents to slow our opponent down. Like whether that's the Bauble or the Karn. You know, we've got Force of Vigor we can call upon. The Disruptor Flute, you know. Yeah, our deck's pretty irritating, but we're on the board. Let's go to round 2. This opener does not work for me. We only get to do one of these once upon a time for free. So I think I can do better than this one. Let's have some mana in our deck. Well, that's mana, isn't it? We could bin off the card that doesn't actually work given our hand, which I think is probably where I want to be here. And then we're just going to be playing Cloudposts and hoping that that's enough. We've got a turn to Disruptor Flute. That's not nothing, but our opponent might be a Wasteland deck. So they could certainly slow our roll. If they play like a Delver here and then flip it and start Wastelanding us, that's going to be a good way of getting through what we've got here. An Underground Sea. A Personal Tutor. All right, we're on the old Doomsday plan. I see. Well, this could be a difficult one. Playing out the Lion's Eye Diamond. That fills me with some amount of dread, so our opponent might be able to win next turn. The Disruptor Flute does help with this, because we can name Thassa's Oracle. But we do need to get to that turn. So next turn, we play the Cloudpost, we play the Disruptor Flute on Thassa's Oracle, make it cost 3 more, hope our opponent doesn't have enough mana in their deck to do that. But that seems unlikely given the Lion's Eye Diamond. It's going to be a bit tricky. This is the sort of matchup that I would imagine is going to be a bit nightmarish for a Cloudpost deck. Do they have a way of drawing one card? If they do, then they can win right now using that Lion's Eye Diamond mana. For example, they have a Cycler, they crack the Lion's Eye Diamond with the Cycle on the stack, and then they just get to have their wicked way with me, and they can use the Lion's Eye Diamond to like cast Consider, and then some Cyclers, and then play the Thassa's Oracle, and then we are in the dirt. Doomsday is a really sweet deck that I'm glad exists. But, boy howdy do I struggle to play it myself. Alright, our opponent has finished. What have they got here? So they got a Barrogoyf, that's unusual. That's going to be their sort of beatdown option. Okay, and they got a Bowmaster kicking around as well, and Psychic Frog, so they've kind of got a smattering of other things they can be doing. Are we dead this turn? Our opponent took a while, so maybe we're not. There is an Echoing Deeps. That doesn't really achieve what we needed to. I think the play here is Cloudpost, and we try and get them to use their mana off of this Lion's Eye Diamond and see if we can snag them with a Disruptor Flute. There is a Brainstorm, and they are just casting that and not cracking the LED. Are we supposed to... Because if we play the Disruptor Flute, our opponent will stack their pile differently after this Brainstorm, so that they can play through the Disruptor Flute. That's certainly something I'm a little bit worried about. We need them to crack this Lion's Eye Diamond and start using that mana for something. Or we need them to like cycle something, and then in response, we can then Disruptor Flute. We're somewhat telegraphed that we have here. But... Alright, so this is our spot to go here. They played the island, so they don't have enough to cast Thassa's Oracle this turn. Alright, the power of Disruptor Flute. It was very disruptive. And we waited for our spot for them to crack and make sure they didn't have anything like a daze or anything going on. And we managed to play that one quite well, I thought. Let's go to the sideboard. Not the best amount of tools in this matchup, if I'm being perfectly honest. There is an argument for boarding in the Swords to Plowshares because it's good against their Barragoyf and Psychic Frog plans. So this is something we could lean into. We also have the Veil of Summers, which can protect some of our disruptive elements. So these are the things I'm interested in. The question is, what comes out in such a situation like this? Kozilek's command doesn't feel at its best, but it does remove their threats relatively well. The Vexing Bauble here does seem good. We don't really need a Bojuka Bog. The Karakas is a thing I would like to have access to, just in case they have a Sheoldred. I don't think we require a Tabernacle here. And the Glacial Chasm, I think we're better off just trying to our opponent's creatures with removal and things like that. The Karn can shut down some of our opponent's things, so I'd like to have access to that. I think the crop rotation here isn't the most important thing. The fact that it gives us access to white mana, which might be a thing we need to lean into, is making me not really want to trim these as too much. I think we can cut one, but more than that becomes a little bit sketchy. I think it's Kozilek's command is looking like the weak link here. So if we strip some of these out... Now, we could take out one of our big Eldrazi. We do need a game plan to just win the game, and I do think these are pretty good at doing that. Like, blowing up two of your opponent's lands is an incredibly strong thing to do. So maybe we can do without the Emrakul. We can just detonate our opponent's lands. I think I would rather just trim on the Kozilek's command. Like, we can exile some of their creatures, but this is much better at doing that. And tutoring for stuff is okay too, but again, I think just the cleaner answers to things like Psychic Frog and Barragoyf is where I would rather be. So I'm going to submit like this. This one does not feel like a winner to me. Let's mulligan this. Okay, Once Upon a Time is good. Vexing Bauble stops some of their more egregious hands. I think we keep this, and we're probably getting rid of this Eye. I think that's the correct one here. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of the Eye. Because I want to be casting the One Ring. Something like Karn is actually a really good payoff because they're not going to be able to pressure it necessarily. So we want to Once Upon a Time into Vexing Bauble. Hopefully we can find something good to go with our other lands using this Once Upon a Time. See what we draw and see what we can find off the Once Upon a Time. Planar Nexus, that's among the best sort of thing we can find. A Cloudpost and an Urza's Tower. The Urza's Tower taps for 3 here. Not this turn, but next turn. So I think that's just better than a Cloudpost for now. So let's just take this tower. I'm going to play this Nexus out. And then we're going to Vexing Bauble. Now, the problem with the One Ring against our opponent's deck is that the way they win the game doesn't involve targeting us with anything. So the One Ring, the protection from it doesn't do anything. It stops them being able to Thoughtseize us, and that's about it. Which isn't really what this game is about. Alright, we're going to see Dark Ritual into the Doomsday. Let's see if our opponent has us dead this turn, or if we get to untap and try again. The Vexing Bauble can hopefully do a little bit of work here, and means if we have any useful spells that we draw, like a Disruptor Flute or something, our opponent can't contest it because they can't cast any free counter magic. Alright, let's see our opponent's sideboard to see if there's anything unusual in there. Okay, still got Psychic Frogs. Yeah, that's not a surprise. Leyline of Sanctity is something they've got in. That is curious. Swords to Plowshares. That is very unlikely to do anything here. So I think the play here is Urza's Tower, play out the One Ring, draw a card with the One Ring, and hope it does something. Now we do have 1 mana off the Spirit Guide. An Emrakul, that's probably not doing anything here. Our opponent can pretty much just get us here. I guess the other option was to hold up the Planar Nexus, so that we have a Swords to Plowshares if our opponent is doing a short line, where they're going to have cards left in their library. But I think our opponent is just going to go for a slow line that can play around the disruption that we have shown them already. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Let's draw some cards off with the One Ring. Cloudpost, we can get that down now. So we got what? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if we play this now, so it's 6, 7, 8. So that's not enough to cast Ulamog. But if we play the Cloudpost this turn, then we can do that next turn. And now we just hold up this... yeah, we just hold up this Swords to Plowshares and hope our opponent is doing a slower line. Or if they are doing a quicker line, then they're not going to go through their entire library, and maybe the Swords to Plowshares can kill their guy. Next turn, we can blow up both their mana sources. Right, it feels like they're going to go this turn, though. We have a line here, so this is going to leave one card left in our opponent's library. So this is our shot here. So if they've got another land in their deck, which I suspect they might do, there it is, then they've got no cards in their library, and this trigger kills us. Alright, we're now on the play for the third and final game in this matchup. I like what we've got here. I think being able to go on the play is going to be certainly more useful. Like if we were on the play in that game, then we get to play Ulamog before our opponent combos there. But they probably arrange their pile slightly differently if that's the case, because they're almost certainly going to be counting what we're doing with our mana and what we can achieve. I don't like double Once Upon a Time here. I think we can do better than this one. I do like the Sowing Mycospawn though. Alright, the Vexing Bauble stops our opponent interacting with some of the stuff we have. I'm not in love with this hand though. But I think I will keep and get rid of this plow. So we fire off one of these for free, which can certainly change how we're going to approach him. I think we just need the land here. Let's get the Planar Nexus out. This Vexing Bauble stops some of our opponent's worst excesses. Makes it a lot more difficult for them to win on turn 1, which is a scary thing that a Doomsday deck can do. Are they going to have Personal Tutor 3 games in a row? They might do. Ooh, they're Thought Seizing us. They're going to see our hand is a little bit on the soft side. They're probably just going to take the Once Upon a Time. No, we took the Vale. Interesting. This means that we might be getting hit by more pieces of hand disruption moving forward. Alright, they're playing into this Vexing Bauble. I'll take that. Planar Nexus. Okay, so we have to play this out because we want the green mana this turn, so we can cast the Once Upon a Time. Maybe Echoing Deeps is something you can trim in a matchup like this, because we're not going to be like reusing Bojuka Bogs multiple times or anything. And they're not going to be destroying our lands either. A Psychic Frog. Yep, good card is good. Let's cast this Once Upon a Time. Urza's Tower is fine here. We already have white mana in case we draw the plow, so I'm just going to take this tower. An Elvish Spirit Guide. Is that a thing I want to play to force our opponent to exile cards? Seem the most exciting, does it? Okay, I'm going to play out this Urza's Tower. Do I play out this Elvish Spirit Guide just to attack? So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So even without this, we can still do our Mycospawn if we draw it. I think we are supposed to play out the Spirit Guide here. It's not exciting, but it pressures our opponent's life total to make the Doomsday lines worse, and hopefully we can beat a Psychic Frog. We're shutting off counter spells. Now they can still hardcast a Daze, but it's going to be a few turns before they can do any sort of hardcast Force of Will type stuff. Yep, so they're going in with some counters on the Frog. Yep, 2 Force of Wills that are junk underneath this Vexing Bauble. Now this means that we're probably able to sacrifice this Vexing Bauble if we want to. A Ponder from our opponent. I imagine they're going to bin off any dead cards this time around. So sacrificing the Bauble is probably worth it. A Duress. Sure, you can have a look at our hand that has nothing going on. That would have been better as a +1/+1 counter. Obviously our opponent didn't know that at the time. So they bash in for 3 here and draw a card, which is pretty strong. Alright, so they're making sure they get a land out before they draw this card. Have they got Surveil land? They do, so they would like to try and select what they're about to find. They left it on top. That doesn't fill me with the most amount of joy. I think we are cracking this Bauble now, though. We do need to get something going. And there's a Tower. That is more mana. Swords to Plowshares. What am I worried about that our opponent can have? I don't think they would have kept a free spell while we had the Bauble in play. So I think we are just playing out this Tower. And we're going to channel a bunch of mana into this. And just plow this Psychic Frog right now. I didn't believe our opponent would have any free spells that they would keep given the situation. And because we sacrificed that, it meant that we had the plow that we could use. Our opponent got a free card off of that, but they did pitch some cards towards it. So there's an interesting ebb and flow in terms of resources so far. We're going to see a Doomsday. We are going to see the Doomsday. So our opponent's got enough mana that they can probably set up a pile that wins next turn. Our opponent's going to be on 8. So we're now in a situation where we could draw an Ulamog and not be able to cast it because we played out this Elvish Spirit Guide. But if we draw anything else, then that was the correct play to make. So I think it was the correct play to make on balance, be able to pressure our opponent's lifesteal. We didn't know they were immediately going to snap off the Doomsday. Right, our opponent selected their pile. Let's have a look. I think it's a bunch of cyclers, most likely. I find this Leyline Sanctity kind of interesting. Right, so we get a turn. It's going to have to be a good one. That doesn't feel like a very good turn, does it? Attack with this. In order to represent the fact that we have something, I'm more inclined to play this Planar Nexus they know about. But we are at the mercy of our opponent here. Now, they might be playing around Disruptor Flute, so they might not go this turn, which could give us another turn to actually find something that helps. But given the clock that our opponent's under, they don't have a lot of time to go about doing this. Alright, so they cracked their fetch land, and now they're brainstorming. So the pile was random, but they were drawing all the cards from it, so not really random, is it? Okay, so they've got 2 cards left. They're going for a Thassa's Oracle now. We cannot interact, so our opponent just has it. Yeah, Doomsday always been a tricky matchup for Cloudpost. I think it's better than it ever has been, but it's still going to be a slightly trickier matchup. But you certainly saw some of the tools we had available to us that could get the screws on our opponent. I do like the Psychic Frog pivot that they have, which is very strong because you have to respect that card because it wins the game so quickly. Alright, we are 1-1. Let's go to round 3. I think this one is fine. I'll keep this. Opponent is a show and tell player traditionally. Thundering Falls. Yep. So the Vexing Bauble is very good against the Omniscience that our opponent was running last time I played against them. Alright, let's have a free spell before we say no to free spells. We don't really want the Tabernacle. I do like the Planar Nexus here. Mycospawn also pretty handy here. The tower is no good. We're not picking a tower. We're not picking a Tabernacle. It's between the Mycospawn and the Nexus. I think we need the Nexus just so we can actually start going up the curve with lands. The question is, are we playing out the Vexing Bauble right now? I think we kind of have to. And I don't really want to spend the Elvish Spirit Guide. There is an option to play the Cloudpost there and use the Spirit Guide to play the Bauble. This way we can access a little bit more mana next turn if we need to. Play around a hardcast days trying to get our Disruptor Flute going. So our opponent shouldn't be able to put a Show and Tell on the stack this turn. So we can Disruptor Flute, naming Show and Tell next turn. Glimmerpost is not unwelcome here. So we play out this Cloudpost. Play the Disruptor Flutes here. And we name Show and Tell. Make that cost 3 more mana. So they could play Ancient Tomb into Sneak Attack, but they would need a Simian Spirit Guide to activate it. Right, just some more selection from our opponent there. We can play the One Ring next turn under the cover of a Vexing Bauble, which is a pretty potent thing to do. If we can find a Disruptor Flute to name Show and Tell, so to name Sneak Attack as well, then we're in a good spot. So our opponents have hard cast days available here. But this is 2 mana, 3 mana. We play this. This is 5 mana, so we can play around the hardcast days and get this One Ring in. Glacial Chasm is not going to be at its best here. Play this. Gain a little bit of life. Taps for 3. Let's get the One Ring in. We'll draw a card now. We have an additional 1-drops we might want to play. And Urza's Tower. That's certainly more mana. That gives us access to 8 mana next turn. We're going to see a Brazen Borrower bouncing our Disruptor Flute is being bounced here. Okay. So, I'm trying to think what is the scary situation that happens here. If they Show and Tell, we can put in the Disruptor Flute and name Sneak Attack. If they Show and Tell in a monster, we can try and deal with it on our turn using the resources we have available to us. That is a Show and Tell. I'll name Sneak Attack now, I think. There's a big stack of cards that our opponent is looking at now. Let's see what we got. There is a Sneak Attack in there. There is a Show and Tell and Emrakul, which is not the nicest of things for us to deal with. They have played land this turn though, so they can't Show and Tell this turn, so we do get another turn of action. Okay, so they kept Show and Tell, Brainstorm, Scalding Tarn, Tamiyo. In comes the Tamiyo. So Glacial Chasm can help us out here. I don't think I'm on trying to crack this Disruptor Flute. I'm pretty sure our opponent has some permission and we've left strand in their hand. I'd rather have the cover of this. We can sit behind a chasm, which works as long as our opponent isn't Emrakuling us. Karn the Great Creator. That is an intriguing one, isn't it? Alright, let's... Disruptor Flute isn't the most exciting. So... How much mana have we got here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we could do this. Cast the Karn. Minus the Karn. Get ourselves the Ensnaring Bridge here. And then we can crop rotate away our Glimmerpost into a tower. Just to get some more cards out of our hand. Or we could turn this into a Cloudpost. Or a... We need to turn it into something that comes in untapped. So we could just go get another tower. That's just more mana that way. We can play out this Ensnaring Bridge. We can play out this Disruptor Flute. We probably name Petty Theft. Can we name Petty Theft? We can. I think that's probably what I'm getting rid of here. Making Petty Theft cost 3 more is definitely annoying for our opponent. We know they've got Show and Tell though. Maybe we're just supposed to get rid of Show and Tell. Because they can't... Well, they can cast this because they have a land in hand. Maybe we just name the Sneak Attack. They already didn't select the Sneak Attack before. Maybe it is the Petty Theft. Just make it harder for them to cantrip into an answer to what we've got going on. Next turn we can Lattice Lock our opponent. We just need to keep this Ensnaring Bridge to hide behind. Now, they do get to attack with Tamiyo. But it's going to be an artifact that doesn't get to activate next turn. If all goes to plan. There's a Brainstorm from our opponent. Okay, so they're flipping the Tamiyo right now. So they can use this to regrow any of these spells if they want. So it's probably going to be a case of regrowing a cantrip to try and find something. I played against our opponent the other day, and they were quite aggressive with that, and it looked pretty good. The Omniscience here. Okay, I know what's going to happen. Our opponent is going to use the Veil of Summer to play through our Vexing Bauble. That is their line here. They Show and Tell in Omniscience with the Veil of Summer to get through it. They've kept this green mana concealed from us, and that might be our undoing. Alright, so the Lotus Petal into the Vexing Bauble, that's fine for us. And then get to attack with Atraxa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they have hard cast Force of Will over there. So we need to find something here. A Kozilek's Command. That doesn't really help us out here, does it? I would very much like to resolve our Lattice, but I don't think we can reliably do that. So let's get this One Ring going. What does this change? Anything? We can do quite a big Kozilek's Command. Play out this Glimmerpost. We gain a bunch of life. So I would like to scry, and I think I would like some colourless spawn tokens. So we want to still be able to make the Lattice here. So this taps for 1, 2, 3. This is 3 mana, 4, 5, 6. So if we leave 1 floating, alternatively we can leave none floating, and then we can crop rotate, but then they could counterspell that, and we don't really want that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. We're also going to get the mana from the Kozilek's Command if this resolves. But we can't rely on this because we are trying to do our next bits and pieces. Disruptor Flute. That works here. So if we put the Planar Nexus on the bottom, then the Mycospawn on top, then the Disruptor Flute on top, and then we tap this for... I guess we can sacrifice these creatures. And then we can Disruptor Flute. Naming Force of Will, which they can hard cast here. Then we minus this. Go and get the Lattice. This is 3 mana, 4, 5, 6. To cast the Lattice, they need to have double days here. But why would our opponent be selecting for dazes with their cantrips? They're playing in the Borrower, so this can attack and damage our Karn. So now what? We have too many cards in hand. Yeah, we're gonna get the Borrower's just gonna kill our Karn. That makes that whole Lattice play kind of rubbish. Yeah, that's not the one, is it? There. We do have another Karn in our deck, but yeah, that play wasn't great for us. But Age is playing around the stuff that they might not have had. Our opponent can't pitch cast Force of Vigor, but they couldn't anyway because of the Vexing Bauble. So we could use the Vexing Bauble as a redraw, but we know we're about to draw into the Mycosynth, or whatever it's called. This is slowly chugging up. We will be able to answer it at some point soon, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they cannot do the Force of Will. Okay, so I think we cast this with Kicker. Resolving spell under Mycosynth Lattice is horrible. So we get to exile one of our opponent's lands here. I think it's the one that gives them multiple mana. That keeps them further away from Force of Will hard cast. So we get the Eye of Ugin out. So we can play the Echoing Deeps right now and get ourselves... So this taps for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So not quite enough to activate just yet. Right, so we'll play this and get a Glimmerpost. Gain some more life here. We can crop rotate if we need to. We don't really need to activate the One Ring yet. We can do that in our opponent's turn. Now there is an argument for activating the One Ring first before we did all that, just in case we drew the thing, but I'd rather make sure that we definitely can't get Tap Post Attractor anyway. Sure, this is going up. Sure, we'll take some damage here. Okay, so we'll tap this. We'll cast this. Spend this as green mana. I will turn this Glimmerpost into another Cloudpost. And do we need to activate the One Ring right now? I don't think we do. So how much mana have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That should be enough to cast the Ulamog, because the Ugin reduces it by 2. So we search, we go and get the Ulamog here. Let's make sure I've done my maths right. So this is 8, and that's all I need for this one. So I'll blow up this Tamiyo, and I'll blow up... Is it the Atraxa or the Brazen Borrower? Probably the Atraxa. And I guess the Yavimaya produces more mana for us next turn. Alright. So we can draw with the One Ring and then draw with the One Ring, and then we'll have enough cards to tap the Ulamog. So we'll draw 4 cards, then we'll draw 5 cards as well as our card for turn. We can just take a big bite out of our opponent's thing. Alright, we got there. We did make a little misstep with allowing our Karn to get killed by the Brazen Borrower. But like I said at the start, there's a lot of intricacies with this deck, but we did manage to get there. So our opponent's deck is somewhat problematic. So we could board in this sort of stuff. It's bad against the Emrakul, but it's good against some of their other threats. And the other day I was playing against them, they had the 3-mana guy that taps, draws and discards a card and makes you a creature from your hand. So I do think we want to have the removal to deal with that. And that goes over here. I don't believe we require a Bojuka Bog or a Tabernacle here. Glacial Chasm is an odd one. It can sometimes come up. I think I'm likely to want to keep that. We also want to keep the Plows so we can get rid of a Mages of the Moon if our opponent has them. Vale of Summer is a card that we can do some stuff with too. Kozilek's command here doesn't feel one of the big highlights. I think we can probably trim on Kozilek's command at the very least. We want to keep all our big guys so our opponent lives in fear of ever casting their own show and tell. If it says we're boarding in a mana land, we could probably take out a mana land by take out an Echoing Deeps. Our opponent isn't going to be blowing up our lands, so these aren't going to be the most high impact. It's a case of would I rather have Echoing Deeps or more Kozilek's command. I think I like the Kozilek's command a little bit. The Vale of Summer, I don't think we actually want. The Force of Vigor for Blood Moon and for our opponent's sneak attack or omniscience feels like somewhere I want to be. We can put something in that has a trigger. Actually, do we have anything that we can put in that has a trigger? It'd have to be something like a Glimmerpost to get a trigger on the stack to give us the opportunity to Force of Vigor. But I think this is a reasonable setup. We've got a lot less time on our clock than our opponents. We're going to have to be a little bit more precise. But I do enjoy talking through the lines with this deck. There are so many for a deck that's not cantripping or anything. I like the Vexing Bauble in this opener. I'm not a big fan of how our mana's laid out here. We're going to need to find a green card to work with our Mycospawn. A green mana source. Oh yeah, it's supposed to keep this. Karakas is pretty good in this matchup though. Okay, I'm going to believe in the power of Karakas. Our opponent is mulligan to 5, which is quite an aggressive start. It's going to be very difficult for them to do something as early as turn 1, but not impossible. Swords to Plowshares. This is a thing we get to cast. Are we playing out the tower or the Glimmerpost? I think it's the tower. And we just deploy the Bauble straight up. We can always put the Karakas in and use that off of a show and tell. If our opponent's show and tell's in a sneak attack, then We do get to put the Cloudpost in. But I guess we don't know that's what's going to happen. We still get to put the Karakas in, which might be enough to stop the worst of sneak attack. Okay, they milled off on a Braid there, using their Thundering Falls. There is a Brainstorm. I'm not expecting to get comboed this turn. There's a Scalding Tarn. We don't know if they're going to crack and shuffle or not. Eye of Ugin. If we play the Eye of Ugin, it means that we have access to a Mycospawn next turn if we draw a green source. But if we deploy this Eye of Ugin and our opponent plays like Ancient Tomb, I guess they would have to have a piece of fast mana. And we haven't seen the Spirit Guides. We've just seen the Lotus Petals. So we could keep this alive and hope that we don't have to deal with a sneak attack this turn. I think I like that. Just as an option available to us. Alright, so they're shuffling away those cards with the Brainstorm. I suspected that would probably be happening. Ancient Tombs. They can play a sneak attack this turn. We can Force of Vigor it. If we can get through our own annoying bits and pieces here. If they have a Summon Spirit Guide, that's a problem for us. So, in our opponent's end step, we can blow this up. I think we have to do that, which means we have to sacrifice our own Vexing Bauble. We have to burn off our crop rotation. Okay, so we dealt with the sneak attack. Don't have the mana we require here. I think we are playing out the Karakas now. So we've got a Plow if they've got that 3 mana guy that can make creatures from their hand. We've got the Karakas up for any legendary creatures that may enter and cause us some problems. If show and tell, we can play the One Ring. We don't get the protection bubble, but it's still the One Ring, and it's quite the draw engine. A crop rotation. We have mana, but we don't have enough mana or the right kinds of mana, which is always a risk with this hand, but it did have some important tools in it. The Force of Vigor, the Vexing Bauble. We've got the Karakas. So, you've got to believe. If they play some sort of Blood Moon effect, it does help us in some ways. So you can play out the One Ring then. But Karakas can bounce an Atraxa, but the damage is already done. It can certainly bounce an Emrakul. But if our opponent's got like Show and Tell into Omniscience, but they might have boarded out the Omniscience because we have the Vexing Baubles. Okay, we need some green mana. That is not green mana. This is a little bit ugly over here now. There's an island. And no play from our opponent. Lots of hard cast stuff available to our opponent. And Urza's Tower. This allows us to play the One Ring. Is that a good idea? Is the next question. Because that goes shields down on the Karakas. The Karakas doesn't beat sneak attack because they've got multiple red pips. So there's no way that we can bounce it in the correct timing because they can just put it in and go to attacks and then we bounce it and then they put it in. So the Karakas won't beat that problem card. A Show and Tell, we then get to untap and try and deal with it. If it's an Omniscience, we're just going to lose to it anyway. Yeah, okay, I think we are playing the One Ring, probably into Counter Magic. Oh no, we're just in, are we? I will take a draw here. A Disruptor Flute. Okay. So they might have boarded lower on Counter Magic because of the Baubles, and they're going to have more reactive stuff like bounce spells. A land. Our opponent didn't do anything with their last land, so I'm not expecting anything to come out of this one either. So the One Ring ticks down. We can activate the One Ring. Let's try and draw some lands. We did draw a very useful land. A Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. So we can cast it. We don't really need to kick this, given what the board looks like right now. So this can get us a Planar Nexus, which massively jumps up the amount of mana we have. And then we can play out this Karn. We could play out another Mycospawn here. I think I do want another Urza's Tower here. Let's go for a Karn. Let's get an Ensnaring Bridge. Let's try and hide behind this. Disruptor Flute with our other floating mana. I think we name Sneak Attack, because this just stops the sneak attack activations entirely. Alright, we've done a lot this turn. Is it enough, is the question. We can Lattice lock our opponent next turn. We're going to see some kind of Meltdown. A Fury. This can polish off our Karn the Great Creator. That's okay with me. Right, the One Ring continues to churn. Just the card advantage we're getting off of this is obviously a lot. So this is what? 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we can just choose it for an Emrakul next turn if we want to. That's probably a reasonable approach. Or we could go 3, 6, 7, and then we'd have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's not quite enough. Do I need a Vexing Bauble in my life? I don't think it hurts to have it. I guess we can cast this in case we draw one of the big O's. A Sowing Mycospawn is fine here. Cast this with Kicker, I think. Blow up their green source. Just get Cloudpost here. And pass. We've got a Source of Plowshares ready to go. Otherwise, we can just shoot it for Emrakul and then cast Emrakul next turn. Right, the Lotus Petal into the Bauble. And we got the match. I don't think this was a thing that made any difference that this got countered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe they were going to try and cast Atraxa, actually. That is a possibility. Like a high cast Atraxa that we managed to shut off with this Bauble. All right, we got the match there, so we are 2-1. Let's carry on. Okay, I can believe in this opener. I'm going to keep this. All right. If you've never played the Cloudpost mirror, it's nonsense because Cloudpost checks every locus on the battlefield, not every locus you control. So things get pretty wild. Planar Nexus. Okay, our Cloudpost is going to tap for a ridiculous amount of mana. 1, 2, 3 mana it's already tapping for. Let's cast the One Ring. Is this a Disruptor Flute? Could well be. I'll play my own Vexing Bauble. This is just going to get cashed in for a card. We'll draw a card of this in response to a Disruptor Flute. Okay, it's just a crop rotation. So they're going to go and get their own Cloudpost here, which will also tap for a lot of mana. But hopefully we're ahead with our One Ring now. A Bojuka Bog, that's not the sort of land they want. Exile their own graveyard. That's to make our Echoing Deeps worse, which means they don't have an Echoing Deeps in hand. A Disruptor Flute. I would like to draw one card, please. An Eye of Ugin. I will take it. This is going to name the One Ring, I would imagine. There it is. So whoever draws the Sowing Mycospawn first probably wins the game. I have to imagine that's how this works out. We did not draw the Sowing Mycospawn. Can we dig our way into it at all? So 1, 2, 3, 4. This taps for 4 mana. We play this. So we've got 4 mana here. We need to keep 2 mana back to Sowing Mycospawn. Or we need to keep 4 mana back if we want to kick it. Which means we tap this for 2. We can do a Kozilek's command for 2. But that gives us 2 tokens. So we can do it for 4 here. So I want to scry. Tag ourselves. Tag ourselves. So this will give us 4 tokens. So we can't do it for the full amount here. If we do it for 1. So this 1 mana and this becomes green. Plus 4 from this. 5, 6 from this. So yeah, we have to do it for x equals 3. Did not find the Mycospawn. We did find another command though. So we don't want the One Ring. Don't really want the Glimmerpost right now. Do want the Kozilek's command though. We could just bottom this and try and go for something else, but we can go 1, 2, 3. We can do a little mini Kozilek's command here. We tag ourselves, tag ourselves. We can pay 1 here. So this and this plus 4 is what we need. No, this and this plus 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so we need 3 little guys left over. This is currently x is 2. So we're going to have another little guy. So this will give us 3 little guys. This will be the 4th little guy. These basically rebuy themselves here. We didn't find it. We could try and Boseiju away their land, or we could just dig deeper again and just do the same thing. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're pretty close to just casting Ulamog. Do I want to just keep digging for the Mycospawn? That's a tough call. We don't want this, I don't think. We don't want this. We can just do the Kozilek's command again. I think I will put this on top. Then we'll cast this, make some tokens, scribe it. So this is x is currently 2. X is currently 4, so we get 4 tokens out of this. So this will be enough. So we say done here. We didn't find the thing we wanted. Just going to have to make do with Ulamog next turn. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I think we go bottom, bottom, top, top. And then we pass, and we hope that we have a turn that we can survive from our opponent. If they get to Mycospawn this turn, then we're in trouble. Echoing Deeps. So we could see something like a crop rotation here. We have 1 green mana over there. We'll tap this now before anything shenanigans happens. Place 1 out. Tap this. Get the Ulamog down. Take out these 2 permanents. Our opponent is scooping. Alright. Tricky one here. Swords to Plowshares can kill an opposing Ulamog and some of these little guys. I don't know how much this game is about the little guys though. Because a Sowing Mycospawn does the damage when it comes into play. Or sorry, when you put it on the stack. We do not require a Bojuka Bog. That is a given. I don't think the Tabernacle is great here either, so that can probably go. The Karakas definitely has some useful text on it though. So I think we're looking at a plains, some plows, and possibly some Force of Vigors. Force of Vigor can't hit our opponent's 1 ring, so I'm not really into that. So if we add a plow and a plains, that's probably fine. The Karn just allows us to get something to sit behind if we're in trouble, or it can just go lock our opponent out straight away. The Vexing Bauble here is actually really bad, isn't it? So let's get rid of those. And that gives us a couple more plows, and then we can either have the Force of Vigor. Do we want the Force of Vigor here, or do we want another plow? Have 1 Force of Vigor. That seems reasonable. Sure, we're going to try it like this. Okay, we have a Cloudpost into the best card in the matchup, which is Sowing Mycospawn. I assume this is the best card in the matchup because I've read it and it looks pretty good. Ideally, you want our opponent to have Planar Nexus but not Cloudposts. Step 1, achieved. This means they could tower on turn 2 though. Let's get our Cloudpost down. So this can tap for 3. If our opponent plays another thing that pumps our Cloudpost, and we can play the Mycospawn next turn. Once upon a time from our opponent, what are they going to find? An Urza's Tower. Okay. The 1 ring. That's pretty solid. No denying that one. So this taps for 2. It can tap for 3. And then we have 4 mana. What can we do with 4 mana? Not enough, because our opponent has the... we don't have the colourless mana for the Mycospawn here. Am I playing out the Nexus or the Glimmerpost? It's probably the Nexus. So that means we have mana to filter into a Source of Plowshares if required. Okay. Pass, holding up, Boseiju, Source of Plowshares, or we can just fire off a little Kozilek's command for some more mana. I want to start kicking this Sowing Mycospawn. Our opponent's 1 ring has gotten 3 cards, which is pretty decent. We don't care about the Karakas. Spirit Guide. Is this going to be a Mycospawn? It is going to be a Mycospawn. That is kicked. Well, this is probably the end of the game. So we need to cast this. Get some more mana going. This is the best we got. This can go on the bottom, and this can go on the bottom as well. I can't. That's not really going to do the job here. Like I said, the first person who casts Sowing Mycospawn wins the game, and that's probably what's going to happen here. And the 1 ring might allow them to then find more. And then eventually they curve it into the Ulamog, and then we pack up our bags and leave. Just an absolute backbreaking card. We can cast a Mycospawn, but our opponent has a Cloudpost of their own. We can't kick our Mycospawn, so if we get a Cloudpost, all we're doing is helping our opponent's Cloudpost. I don't know how we're supposed to win this game. Alright, so we're just going to play this Mycospawn, get a Cloudpost, and hope that our opponent bricks on draws. But it doesn't look good for us here. We do get to be on the play for the last game though, which is huge here. Yeah, this card feels very, very pushed. It wasn't for the Nardus and Psychic Frogs of the world taking all the headlines, I think it would be this. It is quite the Magic the Gathering card. Who'd have thought putting a 3/3 body on a Reap and Sow made it better? Like, the body's pretty inconsequential a lot of the time, but it's just nice to have. Right, is this an Ulamog? They can also reuse their Ulamog with Karakas every turn. We are stone cold dead to it if that's what they play here. Okay, this looks like a big Kozilek's command instead. Which, if it finds an Ulamog, can cast. Provided they're going for the make lots of little friends. That's the option they're going for, making all the friends. They're sacrificing some buddies. It's a Karn. This can go and get Lattice and lock us out. That's fine as well. I don't think we'd rather have the Force of Vigor over a Plow. It's kind of debatable. Let's try having a second Force of Vigor over a Plow. We're on the play, so we've got... let's have another look. Yeah, that's unkeepable as well. Like, it does stuff. It does stuff. I will take doing stuff. I think we get rid of the Echoing Deeps and the Karakas here. We have a Cloudpost. We are up and running. Our opponent has a Cloudpost. Once upon a time. We haven't cast a spell yet. Please find us the goods. Eye of Ugin. That does help us down the line, but it's not where we need to be right now, is it? If we take the Ulamog, what does that do? So we have 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana. I think we're not really looking at Ulamogs right now. Eye of Ugin, though. That has some juice to it. I will take the Eye of Ugin. The problem here is our opponent gets to play a Mycospawn, whatever it's called, potentially this turn. And as we've seen, that just pretty much wins you the game on the spot. They can't kick it, at least. Boseiju on our Cloudpost. Are we turning this into a Cloudpost using our Spirit Guide? I guess we don't have to, do we? We can go and get our Forest here and turn that into a Cloudpost. Alright, so now they're getting a Cloudpost here. That is annoying, for sure. Alright, let's crop rotate. Let's go and get that Cloudpost. Yavimaya, that doesn't do anything. Yikes. 1, 2, 3 mana. We play this. Gives us a 4th mana. This is the 5th mana. If they play a thing, we then get to tutor with the Eye of Ugin. However, our opponent gets even more mana for their turn. That is sketchy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't like it. I don't like this one bit. I think we have to see if we can get an activation of our Eye of Ugin here with the Surprise Elvish Spirit Guide. Planar Nexus. Okay, so we can activate our Eye of Ugin now. Our opponent has a boatload of mana though. Yeah, this is what I was afraid of. We're going to go for our Cloudpost here. And they're kicking this. So if we could get the Sowing Mycospawn here, that's our only real option. But yeah, this matchup does feel like it just comes down to one card a lot of the time. We had the option to Disruptor Flute and stop our opponent from doing Mycospawn stuff. We didn't take that line so that we could have that as an option for ourselves because it's so important. And we're on the play, so we're supposed to be the one doing that first. Also, our opponent pitched a Spirit Guide to make their Boseiju, so I was kind of banking on them not having the green mana readily available. But that was just not the case, unfortunately. Okay, we don't get to kick this, do we? We just get to cast it. So if we go and get an Urza's Tower here, this taps for 3 colourless. 4, 5, 6. So we can kick a Mycospawn right now if we get a tower here. So we can exile our opponent's Eye of Ugin and stop them getting anything good. Or we can take out their Cloudpost. But their Cloudpost is still tapping for 1, 2, 3 mana here. Is it more important to take out the Eye of Ugin? I think it is. That's the thing they tutored for, right? That's the thing that they need as part of their plan. We're obviously not getting a Cloudpost here. I think we're probably just getting another tower. And we're just going to try and win on that line. And not giving our opponent more mana. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4, 8, 9. Do we name Ulamog with Disruptor Flute? Do we name the One Ring with Disruptor Flute? I think this is a tough call. If we name Ulamog, they can't cast Ulamog this turn. At all. Full stop. But if they put a One Ring on the stack, I want to be able to Disruptor Flute it. So I think I'm going to let them have a turn with the lands they have in play. An Urza's Tower. That's a lot of mana. So I put a Karn into play. I also want to be able to stop it. Oh, they're just going to have another Mycospawn. Well, I guess we had 2 as well. But we did tutor for one of them. There was a hard-fought tutor as well. Oh, hate that card. Okay, so we're going to lose our Planar Nexus here, which is going to turn these Urza's Towers. Okay, they're taking out our Eye of Ugin. I can live with that. They're getting a Vesuva, which is going to copy the Eye of Ugin first. 3, 6, 7, 8. So is there any 8 drops we could draw? I guess we could draw a Kozilek's Command. Something we want to sink all our mana into. The One Ring, alright. I guess we're about to draw the One Ring ourselves. Are we naming the One Ring or are we naming an Eye of Ugin? They're both terrible news for us. So 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They can tutor. It has to be the Eye of Ugin, doesn't it? Not a fan of that one. This is where we draw a Mycospawn and blow out their eye. Okay, we are behind. I think I'm okay trading here. Command deck. Glacial Chasm, you are a pile of junk. I think our opponent's just got us here. Like, we stopped them from tutoring a big monster. But they're drawing many cards. No shame losing to the mirror when our opponent Mycospawn first. We'd take this damage this time. This gives us something to pressure Karn with if they play a Karn. I'm okay trading the first one off, but now we want to be able to take the Karn. And they're more likely to attack here when they have a Karn because we blocked last time. Our Cradle is making their Eye of Ugin tap for mana as well. Disruptor Flute. Sure. What would you like to name, opponent? Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. This makes their Ulamog cost more, but that's not really a problem for them because they've got more mana than us. Disruptor Flute. Okay, I guess we're attacking. Let's name the One Ring. So we have a win condition now. It's our opponent's One Ring. Maybe we can sit behind this Glacial Chasm and then the One Ring can finish them off. They can deploy a second One Ring, or they can Ulamog their own One Ring later on. So they do have ways out of their own One Ring. And you staying back on blocks now, opponent? You are. Is that because you're going to play a Karn and ruin our day? Or is it because you're worried about your life total? Elvish Spirit Guide. Welcome to the game. Okay. A Cloudpost. This gives our opponent more mana, but they have all the mana in the world. So let's play our own Cloudpost. This taps for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So if we draw the Ulamog, we can win the game. Or at the very least, we can jam our opponent up a bunch. Once upon a time, that is a very strong hit from our opponent. There's a lot of things they can break this game open with. Ulamog. Boseiju isn't a bad one. We do have another basic in our deck. But if they take out our Planar Nexus, that shuts us off of loads of mana because of the Urza's towers. But they could also take us off of the Cloudpost, which shuts us off for a lot of mana too. Oh, okay. They're just going to go for our Disruptor Flute. Yeah, that's also pretty good. I will get a land here, though. So now will be the time to draw the Ulamog. That's what you're telling me, Deck. We can just get rid of this Eye of Ugin. Yeah, sure. Let's Disruptor Flute. And so the game continues to be a farce, as the Cloudpost mirror is wont to be. I doubt this Glacial Chasm is going to come in clutch, but you never know. 5 turns of the One Ring is all we need. I'm amazed that we're still playing this game. Uh-oh, here we go again. What have you got this time, opponent? A Glimmerpost. Okay, that's some life, but that is not the sort of thing that they were looking to hit. Let's just continue this lovely game of Top Deck Wars. Well, sure. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We drew it first. So, we are going to take out our opponent's Cloudpost, I think, here. Or do we take out one Planar Nexus and a Cloudpost? I think we take out Planar Nexus and a Cloudpost. That shuts off their sagas as well. Their towers, sorry. Okay, so we drew better. Big fan of drawing better than our opponent. It did gain a lot of life off that Glimmerpost, it must be said. A Yavimaya, that's not what they wanted to draw. And now we get to start carving their life. Well, their library is going to be the thing that gets them here. We can go to text. Now their Disruptor Flute is actively good for us. So it makes it harder for them to get back in the game with an Ulamog activation. What did we take out? We took out the Emrakul. That is definitely one of the things I'm interested in keeping out of our opponent's grip. And we took out the Ulamog. Love to see it. Yep, under the bus the Spirit Guide goes. Next turn, we evaporate the rest of their library. And they can't draw an Ulamog. They can't draw a Kozilek. They can draw a Glacial Chasm, but Glacial Chasm prevents damage. It doesn't prevent their library getting eaten. Did we manage to thread the needle? By that, I mean, got lucky and drew better. We have this Force of Vigor. We don't want to use it. Where's the Karakas? Is the Karakas in there? They could Karakas, but then we replay our Ulamog, which is not where they want to be either. Can we replay the Ulamog? We've taken out too many permanents. This is their last chance to do it. Okay. We take out the rest of their library. Force of Vigor on the One Ring and Eye of Ugin. Not sure this helps them out. Like, it's the Hail Mary to see if they can draw something. But this trigger is on the stack. Unless there's something I've missed here. They failed to find a colourless creature. Can we evaporate their library now? We can. Alright, and we win the match. The secret to this match is trying to get the early Mycospawn down. But also, just drawing better if you end up in a stall is pretty good. It gets really, really silly with the Cloudpost charging each other up. But we are 4 rounds in, and we are 3-1. So let's see if we can get the 4-1 on the board. Okay, this hand does some big mana stuff. Let's keep it. Our opponent's mulled to 6. Our opponent's mulled to 5. This makes me want to play the Planar Nexus into Vexing Bauble on turn 1 if possible. It does slow us down a little bit, but our current hand doesn't make a turn 2 Mycospawn anyway. we can always just use a Kozilek's command to power out a little bit of extra mana. Lion's Eye Diamond. Are we going to get a new 7 any second now? We might do. Another Lion's Eye Diamond. That's pretty good. Mana Confluence. Oh, is this going to be Dredge? Could be. If it's Dredge, Vexing Bauble is pretty useful. Kozilek's command removing cards from graveyard is a relevant mode too. Otherworldly Gaze, sure. Our opponent can still cast free spells, they just won't resolve, so they can still get the sack triggers on their Bridge from Belows by playing Cabal Therapies and stuff. There is the Mycospawn. Like I said, I think we have to play this Vexing Bauble and hope to draw another mana source so that we at least have access to Bojuka Bog. Right, so they're dredging. We're going to pop their graveyard out because it's going to be a pretty key zone here. But we got 4 Leyline of the Void sat on our sideboard, so I feel good about that. This is also likely to be the dredge deck that came second in the challenge that lost to this Cloudpost deck in the final. Our opponent's going big with a Colosseum activation. They've got a looting as well. Lots of stuff about to happen here. Narcomoeba is going to jump into play. They don't get to disrupt our hand. So Kozilek's command can get us a 1-1, 0-1 that we can sack. But our opponent's going to put a decent chunk of their library into the graveyard here. There's Poxwalkers, they can bring that back by doing Cabal Therapy stuff. They don't get to Dread Return any monsters, but they get to put in some amount of zombies here. How many bridges am I seeing? 1 bridge, 2 bridge. So they can make 4 zombies. They've also got another Lion's Eye Diamond and another Faithless Looting. The difference of play and draw here is enormous for us. But Dredge is a deck that should be winning most game ones. Certainly less than it used to back in the day. Right, so they're casting the Faithless Looting. It's going to bring back a Poxwalker. Okay, so they can make a bunch of zombies here and just say, can you beat that? And the answer is probably not for us, but it's not entirely impossible. So they can fire off these Cabal Therapies, get their bridge tokens. Obviously, it's just going to get countered by our Bauble, but they're still going to get all of the zombies. They got some more. They can do that all over again. They've also got an Ikrik that's going to jump out next turn. So we're looking to draw Tabernacle or any untapped mana source to win the game. Because if we put Tabernacle in, our opponent's just going to lose all these guys. So we have a pretty good out. But if we don't play the Bauble here, then our opponent just Cabal Therapies away our crop rotation. That's not an out to us anymore. Alright. Any untapped mana source, please. Alright, they're going deeper. Makes sense. Just make sure they have lethal. And that certainly looks lethal to me. They do still get us for 6 damage. And how many Ikariks is it? Just the 1? Yeah, they get us for 6 damage a turn. So we're not out of the woods if we find the... if we find the source to get our Tabernacle in. Understood, opponent. You've got a lot of power in play. Can we find the untapped mana source? There's a lot of them in our deck. We didn't find it. If we crack the Bauble and find it, and we find a green mana source, that works too. We did not find it. Okay, we are dead. I'm going to bring in these Leyline of the Voids. They seem pretty good. The plows are also certainly useful for like the recurring threats. So I'm interested in this sort of stuff. Glacial Chasm is useful. Our opponent's going to struggle to do much about that. The Karakas is unlikely to do anything here, so we can get rid of that. Vexing Bauble, great. The One Ring, reasonable. Karn, pretty reasonable. Kozilek's command removes cards from graveyard, so that's pretty reasonable. Mycospawn can find us the scary things we need to put our opponent's deck down. Do we need these things? I don't think we need the big top end. Maybe I'm wrong. Like both of these attacking once is probably game over. Probably more so the Ulamog than anything. So I think we can trim the Emrakul. Is the One Ring too slow? That is a question. I think the answer to that is probably yes. Disruptor Flute doesn't feel amazing here either. I think I'd rather have these sorts of things. Now we can slow down some of their things, but we can't be sure we're naming the right things until it's too late. So I think we're just going to ball like this. But we have the best hate for Dredge that was ever printed in Leyline of the Void. So you got to believe in the busted sideboard cards. Vexing Bauble is handy. We have a Kozilek's command. I think I will... am I going to keep this? On the play, I think we can be a little bit more... but they can just go like... I suppose we have the Sowing Mycospawn as well as an option. This stops our opponent's worst, scariest things. I think we will keep Leyline of Sanctity. That stops Bojuka Bog. What of these do I actually want first? So if we play Planar Nexus, on 2 we play Cloudpost. On 3 we play another Cloudpost. So Cloudpost that's for 3. And then we still don't have Sowing Mycospawn. So we would need this. So on turn 3 we have 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. So we would need the Cloudpost. Sorry, the Spirit Guide to do that. I think the Spirit Guide is where I want to be. We could play out the Cloudpost right now, and that gives us 3 mana for next turn. I think that ends up being better for us. Gives us 3 mana for the next turn, and 4 mana, but we can then fire the Kozilek's command next turn and remove stuff from their graveyard. Let's get this Bauble down. And then we'll play this Cloudpost. Yeah, so next turn, we can do a Kozilek's command where X equals 1, which allows our Mycospawn to do enough the following turn, as well as get rid of something our opponent's put into the graveyard here. Now, if they put 2 things in, that is a little bit more annoying, but we have Graveyard Hate in hand. A Grave Troll and an Imp. That is a little bit annoying. Right, Planar Nexus. So we could take out the Troll here, or we could try and like nab a bridge or something like that, which I think is worth doing. Right, a Narcomoeba is coming out of the graveyard. Do I care about this Narcomoeba coming out when they have nothing to do with it? I don't believe so. So we can sacrifice our guy to remove bridges when we make the guy here. Kozilek's command is pretty annoying for Dredge to deal with. If our opponent puts a lot of zombies in play, we can just go and shoot her up Tabernacle. Cabal Therapy targeting us. Okay, we're going to exile some cards from graveyards. I'm going to make a spawn. What am I going to exile here? Is it their only remaining Dredger? They're targeting us with this Cabal Therapy. Let me take out their only Dredger. And now this gives us a token that we can remove bridge tokens from, bridge triggers from whenever we want. What are they going to name here? They could name the Mycospawn. Karn the Great Creator. Sure, we don't have a Tormod's Crypt in our Karn package, which is something that maybe we could think about, but it's not really going to matter in the face of a Leyline anyway. And Urza's Tower, that makes a lot of mana. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we could sacrifice our Eldrazi spawn to get the Mycospawn going. Is that where I need to be here? I think having this in play is better than not having it in play, just because we can sacrifice it. So we could cast the Mycospawn without kicking it. Or we could kick this now. We know our opponent isn't doing anything. If we kick it, we get rid of their land. We could get a Tabernacle or something. Maybe I'm just kicking this. So we'll exile their land. And then we'll probably just go and get ourselves Eye of Ugin. And then this can tutor for more Mycospawns, which can then tutor for more lands. They can get back their Icarid here. No, they can't actually. We got rid of their only black creature as well. They didn't play a land on their previous turn. I think we're in a pretty solid spot here. Get jab for 1, rather than holding this back on blocks. They're going to be going to draw and discard. Alright, they're just scooping it up. They've had enough. So Mycospawn, pretty good. So on this coming turn, we can play out this Nexus. We'll have 3, 6, 7. So we can 3, 6, 7. Yeah, so we can just tutor Eye of Ugin and then immediately the next turn get something spooky in. Alright, I like how we've sideboarded here. I think we're just going to go back in. This time we can mulligan to Leyline because our opponent's on the play. Alternatively, we can have in our opener. That would be lovely. Just have a nice 7-card hand with a Leyline. Show it to me, deck. Well, well, well. That is what I asked for, wasn't it? So our opponent has to contend with our Bojuka Bog options as well as this Leyline, which is a lot of nonsense, which is what I'm here for. So they're going to do like dig in with the spell whose name I can't remember now. Feels like what they're going to do at the end step. A Cloudpost, a Planar Nexus. I think we want the Planar Nexus here. I think that ends up being the best shout for us here. Then we'll deploy this Cloudpost and start our mana ramping. So next up, if we find an Elvish Spirit Guide, we're not... Ooh, a Chain of Vapor. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm not going to sacrifice one of my lands. Okay, our opponent gets to start doing some stuff over there. We do have a Kozilek's command to remove something from their graveyard if they just put something little in. I will deploy the Planar Nexus and pass. We can Boseiju their only land. That is a Lion's Eye Diamond. There's going to be a breakthrough, crack the Lion's Eye Diamond in response. That's quite a powerful tool our opponent has in play right now. Here's a breakthrough. What do they have? They have 1 Stinkweed Imp. I think we just take the Dredger and just make them draw 4 cards. Is that true? They have the Lion's Eye Diamond here. I think we have to let this hit, actually. And then we can try and take out a key piece once this is all finished resolving. Because they have 2 Faithless Lootings as well, so it's just like a bit of hassle. So this Narcomoeba is going to come in. They can Cabal Therapy. Or we could just snap off this Narcomoeba. But then we've got the Faithless Looting coming down. Oh, our opponent's got us in a bit of a tricky position here. I think the play here is to take out this Narcomoeba. They get 2 dredges. We get to stop any bridges by having this token in play. Okay, so I'm going to take this Golgari Grave Troll and put 6 cards in. There's a bridge. There's 2 bridges we can get rid of at will. 3 bridges. Okay. Opponent has no cards in hand. This is going to be horrible for our opponent right now. So we can play this Urza Saga out. We can cast this. So we can go 2 mana. Just try and work out if we want to kick this. So this is 2 mana. This is 3 mana. That's 5 mana. This is 6 mana. So we can just kick this and take out all of our opponent's action here. So we'll exile this. We'll exile their bridges as well. This searches for our Bojuka Bog. Snap this off, take out our opponent's graveyard. They have no permanents, no graveyard. Our opponent agrees that the matchup looks pretty rough for them. And we got the GGs as well. Alright, so that's the end of the league, and we finished with a 4-1. The only round we lost to was Doomsday, which is traditionally a very difficult matchup for the Cloudpost decks, although we do have a little bit more juice against them in the form of Disruptor Flute. Certainly a new tool which actually gives us a way of beating them, and we did win the game off the back of that Disruptor Flute. But yeah, otherwise our deck felt like we could roll into a bunch of stuff. The mirror was a little bit dicey, but we drew slightly better, so we got there. Looking at this deck, it's a horrible beast to play against, that's for sure. I think not having the Wastelands is kind of an interesting push and pull, because when I've played against this deck that has the Wastelands in, it can just say, you don't get to play the game anymore, which is obviously horrible. But because it makes so much fast mana, it ends up just... Sure, it doesn't get to Wasteland you and Mycospawn you in the same turn, but it does still get to take out one of your lands and advance their game plan. And their game plan is so strong in the end game that I think that's probably okay. I think maybe the Wastelands would help in the Doomsday matchup, where you just need to be able to attack them on a certain line. And having Wastelands can mess up their pile after they've already made it. So I think that would be an interesting thing. But I do like this build, like just with all the fast mana, all the big mana stuff does make a lot of sense. It allows us to fit in a decent chunk of utility lands without having to compromise too much. And it means that we can put Disruptor Flutes on Wastelands without hurting any of our own plan. The Karn board, arguably I could see having a Tormod's Crypt in here. Or, you know, something of that ilk. Just as a little bit of graveyard hate that we can reach to. Although we do have the Bojuka Bog that we can reuse twice with Echoing Deeps with our crop rotation, as well as just fighting it with Mycospawn. And we also have Kozilek's Command, so maybe that's just not worth the slot here. I do like having slim Karn packages, because having a Karn that can do like 1 or 2 things is often fine. Like some matchups, just Karn being in play is really horrible. Like when we played against the Storm deck. So just having a couple of options like, okay, we need to live longer, we need to win the game. Those are the 2 options, and they both seem pretty solid here. The planes into Plough is quite nice as well. I think having the best removal available is a nice place to be. We did board that in a few times. Yeah, a big thumbs up to this list. Easy to see why it won a challenge. I think if it wasn't for Psychic Frog and Nardu taking all the headlines, I think everyone would be talking about this deck as being a problem deck, to be honest. And I think as things go forward, we might end up seeing this becoming something that people are struggling to play against. I've already had to adjust how I play to this with some decks. I started bringing in things like Damping Sphere into my sideboard, which can overlap as Storm Hate as well as trying to hurt this deck, because this deck is a doozy, especially when it's just jamming Mycospawns down your throat. I think this is certainly one of the most powerful cards in Modern Horizons, and it's been impressing me a lot, and every time I play it, it impresses me even more. It's just so good. And I think the Eldrazi deck that is using this to go and find more Wastelands to like smash your opponent that way is quite a different way of playing it to how it plays in this deck without the Wastelands, but they both seem incredibly strong and help you execute your game plan. And I would not be surprised to see Sowing Mycospawns tearing up tables as long as it's around. I don't think there's been a better time to play a big mana deck, really. This deck feels very strong. It's got a lot of good tools against some of the scarier things in the format right now. Lots of nice graveyard hate too. Just having like the commands and the crop rotations just to say no to graveyard based stuff is really potent. Yeah, so it's a brave new world where Cloudpost is a good deck that is also relatively quick off the mark now. Like, I've been sowing Mycospawn on turn 2 before, and you know, you just get so far ahead doing something like that. You've got a 3/3 body, and you've got the extra land, and it's the exact land you want to make your hand even scarier. And just stuff like that can really do the work. And the Kozilek's command, as we saw in the matchup against the Cloudpost, just been able to dig a bunch. And if you've got the Eye of Ugin, because it gives you 2 off the cost of this, you can just command into command and command. If you're looking for one specific thing like we were, you can just do that. And that is a very solid way to be playing a game of Magic the Gathering. Yeah, big fan of this deck. Unfortunately, Tabernacle does cost £1 billion. I can't remember what it's at now. I think it's about 5k. It's an extortionately expensive card, and they should reprint the reserve list. You can moan about me in the comments for that opinion, but I'm a legacy player with a lot of legacy cards that would decrease in value if the reserve list got reprinted, and I just want it reprinted because I think Magic the Gathering Legacy is so good. Even we're in a horrible time right now with the Blue-Black Rescaminator, but even so, Legacy is just such good Magic the Gathering. There's so many different cards and things that interact that is just wonderful, and it's just the perfect power level. So I'd rather more people play it, even if that affects my own bank balance negatively. All right, little rant over. Cloudpost deck good. Big thumbs up to Cloudpost deck. It feels like one of the real decks in the meta right now. This, Eldrazi, Rescaminator. Some of the Mystic Forge decks look pretty real at the moment as well. There is currently only one deck on Goldfish that is above 5%, and unfortunately that deck is at 40% right now, which does tell you the situation we're living in right now. But there are other decks you can play in the format. Even though Rescaminator is everywhere and is clearly the best deck and needs a ban, there are other decks that can go toe-to-toe with it and win tournaments, like this thing that TrueFuturism, who is an excellent Cloudpost player, has crafted and absolutely smashed a tournament with, and congratulations to you for that. This deck is the real deal. All right. Thank you so much for watching this one. I hope you don't all go out and start playing Cloudpost online, because it's a horrible matchup for Turbo Adepts, and why would you do that to me? All right. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye.
If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbo Adepts, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbo Adepts guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.